2011 in the clinical area, and I also graduated from Triton College.
Well, good. All right. You sound familiar.
Do I? I've been in classes before.
Have you? You've been in my class before? I
Not,
teach mathematics.
I'm not sure, but I have been in the CTE department classes.
Oh, well, you said you were a graduate of Triton. I've been here thousands of years. So
Oh, yeah. Yes, I graduated from the nursing program many moons ago.
uh, those moons are still active. Well, welcome, Miss Sharon. Welcome.
Thank
All
you.
right. We are, can you see the screen of the videos that we're
Yes.
going to be looking at? Okay, fantastic. So after each of the videos, we're going to take about 3 to 5 minutes. This is not a written proposal or anything. It's just a discussion of what your reaction or anything that you would like to give us in regards to details. I know while all of us as instructors, we're looking for rubrics to say exactly how this is going to be graded, but it is not graded whatsoever. I am going to be one of my writing professors when I was in my freshman year, thousands of years ago. She used the following grading system. Beautiful is great, and meant that as an A. Tremendous effort on yourself, she meant that as a B. You need to achieve your goal, she meant that as a C. And she said, you deserve everything you get, she meant that as you failed the test. So I share this with all of you because I share it in class to tell my students to get them motivated to think not just of grades, but think of the education behind it. Therefore, we're going to get started. First one is Sheldon Turner, who is our department chair for the science department.
Sure. So I'm always on the lookout for new methods, things that are coming out of education research. But one of the ones that I found works really well, and I like to do as many labs, classroom activities as I can. Something called like a jigsaw style, where each student is working in a different component. They're working on a different piece of a bigger problem, and so they sort of become the experts in that thing they're working on. And then once they've had time to work on it and understand it, they come together and they have to teach their classmates what they learned, as then they get taught by their classmates. And as a team, as a group, they're sort of able to solve a certain problem, a piece of a bigger problem. And so you just sort of keep building up there from the individual student to smaller groups to bigger groups, till eventually you can have sort of a whole classroom discussion working on that topic, whatever I was trying to teach that day. And really what that means is I don't have to lecture about it, because the students are sort of learning their little pieces and then teaching each other as a whole. So I've been turning a lot of activities, a lot of things into that sort of style. Along with that, I really like any time where we can have some sort of role play activity where students have to sort of put themselves as an expert of some topic. So they'll each sort of represent a different discipline, and then they'll have to work in teams to figure out the answers to questions. And again, anytime students are teaching other students, they're going to remember that information a lot better than if I'm just telling it to them, I'm just lecturing at them. So I try to be more of a guide or facilitator of their learning instead of just, here's what I say, remember it for later. Something that I've worked on, especially in my field of geology in my classrooms, is finding things that sort of include all of our students, and something we all have in common with all different backgrounds, all the things is that we all live in this area. So I've been trying to work on what's called sort of geographically relevant or location relevant teaching, location relevant content. And so I sort of recreated all the lab manuals and things. Instead of using publisher designed material, I've made, our projects or labs or activities are based around things that are happening in our community. So our local rivers and our local mining issues and all the stuff happening around here in our area. Because that's something, again, that the students have seen in their everyday life. It's something they've experienced and they can share together. And I found that's one of the things that really helps foster those conversations across class and race and all the the backgrounds we have here on campus. And there's a lot of great stuff out there about how to do this, and something that I keep trying. With equity, to me, the way I see that is not treating everyone, equally, because I think there is a difference between equity and equality. And so what it really means for me to be equitable in my approach to teaching is to learn each student's individual needs and bring in their strengths and sort of work on them, and teach as sort of an individualized way as I can. Now that's difficult when there's 20 or more students in a room, but the first part is just getting to know the students. So I start every semester with something called a values affirmation survey. So the students sort of get a chance to write down and express what they care about most. And this isn't just like a little icebreaker of something interesting about them, but it's really like, in terms of their family or their spirituality, in terms of their athletics or their academics, what really matters to them? How does it drive who they are? And that's something I get to know them much better from that survey. And again, it's not for a grade or anything. It's just something that help me get to know them, and I also then share back with them who I am and what I care about, and we talk about the things that are sort of happening outside of the classroom, outside of school, and from that I get to know the students' priorities, and then I can tailor what I'm teaching and find ways to connect it with them and their priorities. So yeah, I think that the first step is always, if you're going to try to teaching in an equitable way, you got to know who the students are and you work on them with their needs. So when I think of my teaching philosophy, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm developing a new class. How do I go about doing that? Or if I'm redesigning a class. And I use something called a backwards design. So I go all the way to see what are my learning objectives. What do I really want students to get out of this class by the end of the semester? So I start there before I make any labs, any lectures, anything else. Start there. What do they need to know by the end of the semester? Once I have that, then I work to the next piece as well. How am I going to know if they've been learning that, right? What are my sort of assessment strategies? What types of activities, whether they're posters or tests or presentations, what things are going to allow them to show me what they've learned and have they met those objectives? Then, right, once I have sort of my goals, my assessment, then I can start to build things like the laboratories of like, okay, what are the hands-on activities they're going to get to do to help them work towards those goals I have for them. And then finally, the last thing, which really is the least important part to me in my classroom, are the lectures, right? Like, what things do I need to teach them in order to get them ready for the labs? And that's why it's called backwards design, because a lot of times we sort of start with that. Okay, here's all our content, here's all of our lessons, and then let's figure out tests and stuff from there, and then maybe we'll throw on some objectives. But I really try to start at the other end and work my way backwards to the piece that what the students are seeing. So especially in science, I think sometimes it can seem very out there and far away from the student's life. So I always make sure every semester in every class, there's some sort of assignment that asks the student to think about and connect what we're talking about in class with something in their everyday life and their experiences and their memories. So usually I do this through journals. So usually on Blackboard, we'll have either a reading assignment from some sort of nonfiction popular book, not from a textbook or anything, or it'll just be questions that I ask. I might have them go read websites, might have them look up different things or watch certain videos. And then they just get a chance to reflect on it. So it's, I'm not looking for any particular answers. It's usually the questions are about, what does this remind you of? What does this make you think of? Is there a class you took that this is similar to? Is there something you did in childhood or place you grew up that's related to this topic we're talking about? It's really a great way that gives them a chance to make those connections. In addition to sort of helping them make those connections, I get to learn a lot more about the students. And I've actually learned some geology from my students. I'll have a student who grew up in a certain mountain range in Mexico, and now all of a sudden now they've connected that to what we were talking about the Rocky Mountains, and I've learned a lot of things that way from those students. So it makes it relevant for the students, and it makes it fun for me. And one thing about relevancy, I always challenge my students at the beginning of every semester, and I say, if you ever ask me the question, hey, why does this topic matter for my life, and I can't answer that question, then I will not put it on the exam. And so far, no students have ever taken me up on that, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job. It's all about assessment, and we have formative and summative assessment. For me, the way I really have tried to change the way I think about evaluating student learning is to, sometimes it makes a little more work for me, but it's having more open-ended style questions. So I really focus for the students and for myself to not be trying to get them to get a particular answer or to memorize certain facts, but to really understand concepts. So in a multiple choice question, it's sort of just right or wrong. So I use as much as possible more open-ended style questions where students are writing in what they do know about a topic, what they do understand about the question I'm asking, and then I grade it in a way where it's not right or wrong. There's a grade, a gradation there. They could have a partially right answer or a mostly right answer, and they get some points for that. And that's a way for students to sort of see how close they got. And then, if we do that over and over again, they might have started off of like getting a wrong answer to a somewhat right answer, a partially right answer to a mostly right answer to finally, by the time we get to the final, they've gotten all the way up to, they got the full, really good, complete answer. So, I think it's just rethinking about what classroom tests and stuff can be. I am also always trying to make sure it's more than just tests, right? Trying to look at are there other ways students can show me what they know. So we do a lot of poster presentations in my classes or PowerPoint presentations. Lately, with things going online, I've been having students create their own wiki pages about topics in the class. And so just always think about the different ways students can show me what they know. Because again, my goal is, what have they learned? It's not about can they answer a certain question.
All right. Thoughts, criticisms.
Backwards design. You mentioned backwards design,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it's a great way to look at what you want the outcome to be, and then how do you get there. But it's counterintuitive, to people, some people, especially myself. So I've been working on that. Teaching with the end result in mind.
Okay.
And structuring your course around that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting concept.
It is very interesting. Anyone else?
I like the idea of students teaching each other.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved with the Scouts for many years, and one of the concepts of the Boy Scouts is that the older Scouts teach the younger Scouts, not the adults. So the adults are there to guide, and that struck me as a really interesting way of doing it. So when I hear about these different things that this gentleman was talking about, the different ways he approaches teaching, and I was trying to think, how can I structure what I'm teaching for the students to teach one another? And I think it's dependent. I have an intro class,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is vocabulary dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So they're learning the vocabulary as they go into more deeper classes in architecture and construction. So I often think about this, like, how do I make it more interesting when the big thing is they've got to learn the basic vocabulary of the profession.
The other thing that I've done is that, and the students seem to enjoy it. The psychology too is very vocabulary, I'm sure. So I give them some information. I break them up into groups. They have topics that they can if you're interested in this topic, go there. If you're interested in this topic, go there. So that way, there's no you. And then I give them information on the topic. And then they teach that information. They're called pop-up presentations. So they teach the information to each other. And then they can go look for more information that they like. And then they would do a PowerPoint presentation. Right? Construct this all in class. Right? And then they email me their presentations, and I put it in the module so everybody can use it. And then they present. Like the first class, they teach themselves the information and they do the presentation. And then the next class they present. So, and there's a lot of laughter and it's very loud. So I take that as a good sign.
I would think.
Yeah. And then they because a lot of times the students are afraid to present, afraid to get up in front of class, and so when they're thrown in there, they're like, oh, it's not so bad.
And they're not up by themselves.
Right. Everybody's in the
I think that's one of the things. We have a lot of presentations because of what we're teaching.
Right.
So I often find that the shyer students sometimes don't do the work, so they don't have to get up and present.
Right.
So we're talking about 18 and 19-year-olds who might be very shy. This sort of profession attracts a more, I mean, the great designers in the world, I would say more often than not, are introverts, and they're not the kind of people that want to get up and talk about who they are or what they do. They work quietly.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a really great way to get some of those introverts paired with some of the extroverts to get up and feel more comfortable making presentations. So I'm going to take that.
It was just it's interesting. You know, one day I'm like, oh man, this could be really dull. They're going to have to sit here and watch me talk it. You know? So I'm going to give them the information, and they can teach it to each other, and then they can teach it to the class themselves. And it just turned out to be kind of
It turned out really great.
Yeah, really fun.
How about you, Jack?
I actually, I agree with Sheldon with a lot of philosophy of teaching, the way how we're doing things, because this is what whole science is all about for us. We want the student to hands-on. But at the same time, I want a good instruction and direction and the right way how to do things. So I find like hands-on material and having students to teach each other is a great idea. But you have to first also, at one point it says like, how do you know about your student? You need to first to be equitable, yes, in the classroom, which is, you have to learn about individual student a little bit more to build up like an opinion, like how you want to actually things like, yes, you might put student into group, but the disadvantaged student might hide in and not participate this much. And you won't be able to figure out is what's participating or not. So I want to make sure that even those disadvantaged students to be reached out within those certain group as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and you don't want them to like call them like a cold call for them. You don't want to call them immediately in the classroom and have them. But you want to make sure also they also participate. They actually doing something. So in my classroom, I do like a coloring book. So I'm actually give them like a material to color as a bone, as a muscle, as the blood vessels. Before they actually, before I give them the models even. So then they actually go to the models and they look into all of that. And then the more excited things, they can go to the cadaver room and I can introduce it to them. And the human being, how things work, and how they actually sit and fit correctly, and why different structures should be like that, not in different way, and how to maintain all this homeostasis in the body, and how the structure works with it. Yeah.
I want to come to your class. Man.
I don't know. I'm sure someone will take an AFP with you.
Miss Sharon, did you have any thoughts of what you learned or expressed from the video?
I was, since I teach in a clinical setting, it's a little bit different in the classroom, but we do have presentations and there is sometimes a problem with the stronger student taking over and the weaker student really not um, evolving as you want them to. So I could relate to that. And with the sharing, having the students teach another student, I think I like that idea. I'm just trying to figure out how I can incorporate it.
Hmm. So if I may throw this out, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you have any thoughts?
Oh, I do, but go ahead first.
Hmm. All right. All right. I wanted to throw this out to all of you. If you could, based on what our presenter in the video stated, if you could create a 5-word phrase of what this video was about, what would you say? 5 words. Let's think about it. 5 words that if someone was to look at this video outside of Triton College, at any and all universities or college or university itself, or even in some type of workshop or presentation or some type of symposium, and you had to have a title for this video, what 5 words would you use to capture what Sheldon was talking about? Go ahead, Sarah. I do apologize for you being last.
That's okay. You want me to answer this question first?
Or you-
5-word thing? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Or you can go to the previous one, too, your summary.
So can I go back to the previous one? Okay.
Sure.
So what I was going to say about engaging students and, focusing on maybe some students are more shy or something like that, I really appreciate the idea of a jigsaw, because when you do that in the really structured way, you have home and expert groups. Mm-hmm. So you put people in their expert groups so that everybody is working on the same problem together. And then if you don't want to do whole class presentations, because maybe you don't have time for that, then you put them in their home groups so everybody's representing the different piece of expertise, and they just kind of teach each other that way. So that makes the shy students feel compelled to talk to everybody, because they're going to have to represent their subject area on their own. Mm-hmm. What I also really connected with in Sheldon's comments there was the idea of him having people do role plays, because that really would compel students to not just give information, but to make an argument and really connect the content to application. So if they have to role play, something with our architecture, did you say?
Yeah, intro to architecture.
Yeah,
Very basic.
Basic concepts. But why is this design valuable? Then they would have to use the vocabulary and apply it in that way. I mean, I don't know your field, so I can't just make up.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. No, I do. I understand what you're saying.
So I think stuff like that is just interesting, and what a good way to make them.
I thought about role playing 2 days ago in trying to solve an issue about something we were presenting. Well, actually, can you imagine teaching 18-year-olds about zoning? Like, I don't think I knew much about zoning until I owned a house and had to really start to, anyway. So how do you make learning a topic like zoning for 2 hours interesting to your students? So I was thinking, I wonder if I could do something about like creating a role play opportunity.
Wouldn't that be neat? Because then they could have the vocabulary that you want them to build, but then they have to make an argument from different people's perspectives about if there should be a zoning change or not.
But they have to learn about zoning first before they can actually do that.
So they're sitting there learning your concepts, your vocab, like you were saying. That'd be great.
So that's just something new, because we don't have a textbook. I have topics that I've been given by the director of the department that I have to handle. And so I'm trying to improve on the way that we were doing, that she gave me to do it. So that's a way to do that.
Sorry.
So I think that's a really good way. That's like a really interesting idea, because I was thinking sort of the same thing, but I'm hoping that I somehow could get them to understand the concepts before we did the role play. But
Can I make a suggestion on that? I took a class here with apps in the classroom
Mm-hmm.
and for vocabulary and things. And I know it's very simple, but I've been using it in my class a little bit. And Kahoots,
I've done it.
and you can send the vocabulary also into the app for them to look at at home too. It just seems like really popular. I mean, I use it with, I teach CCD too, and to the 8th graders, and they just like blase. But the older student really gets a kick out of it.
And that's how I prepped them for their
you know?
midterm. I did a Kahoots game to prep them for their midterm.
Yeah.
So I said, all this information will be on your midterm in a different way, but
Yeah.
this gives you an idea of where we're going.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Sarah, because and we go to the other 2 videos too. For mathematics, we actually, I actually bring in the real world. Think of when we talk about math functions. The first thing I ask students is, when we're talking about math functions, and saying that if we're talking about an intersection, can you mention any examples of intersections? And then we'll go around the room and ask individuals, like, what do you think of an intersection? They'll tell us, maybe their street that they live on. And I said, that's fantastic. And one person mentioned about 2 states that intersect each other. And I'm like, that's really cool as well, too. And then I'll expand on that to get those individuals who are those introvert individuals, like, maybe I'll say the wrong answer. Nothing is wrong, because intersections are anything and everything. And so, yeah, we do something. I do something like that. So, but let's go back. If you had 5 words to describe this video to any institution here at Triton College, or any 4-year institution like Dominican University, I just saying Dominican, not saying I'm from there. I don't want anyone to say that, because I will say San Diego State University. Whew, let me move on. What 5 words would you use? Who wants to go first? Should we use the virtual audience first?
That would be me. Right. Maybe getting students involved in their learning experience.
Okay. I like it. Who did you say next? You said Jack? Okay, all right.
Okay. I would say active learning. Teaching has to be linked to real life.
I like that. What was that? Who did you call next? Oh my goodness.
All right.
Who did you say? Who did you say next?
You can pick me.
That's exactly what I do in class. And it's because it's always usually the next person next to them, because they've been talking to that person all.
So I said engaging students by forging connections.
I like it. What? Moving across the room?
Students' learning styles.
Your students' learning styles? I like that too. Because, mathematics, everybody has different learning styles. I talked about that on the first day of class. We have visual learners, we have textile learners, and we have audio. And I said some of us, all 3. I even give examples.
That's right.
Because I do that so that I say this for me. Students who come into class, I say this is probably the class that you probably did not want to be in. Because 1, they told you needed to take this class. Or B, they told you needed to take this class. Always get chuckles, always. How about you?
I went really broad, and I just said ideas for improving your instruction. And just because it was lots of different ideas. And then I thought, well, it could be ideas for engaging your students. So either one.
Either one. I like them all. I'm impartial because the fact that I'm not going to choose. That would be the other coordinator. All right, so let's watch our second one. It's about how many minutes, 6 minutes, 34 seconds. And Joe, you are up.
I just talked to him yesterday, I think, in a virtual.
A number of years ago, I
did.
was a part of a Department of Labor grant, and it required us to create Creative Commons licensed material. So it really opened up this idea of open educational resources, materials that can be freely shared, no cost to students. People can take and adapt it and refine it for their use. So a lot of my materials, whenever I've been able to do that, I like to rely on those resources, keep costs affordable for students. Now, that being said, they can't always, it's not easy to replace some of the resources and technology that a lot of our publishers offer today. So I do use those in some cases, especially the adaptive resources that some of them offer. So students get an experience tailored to them where it really focuses on their needs, highlights, this is the information that you need to study more, this area you already know, so that it makes the best use of their time to help them get prepared for it. Diversity is embedded in a lot of my coursework. When I'm talking about environmental biology, we're highlighting things around the planet. And so I think it ties in a lot with the diversity of our students and the experiences that they bring well. We can talk about the different experiences they have. We talk about different environments around the world, how that shapes human behavior in relation to the environment, the diversity of organisms that are there, and how we see a lot of similarities around the planet, but also these unique things that we see. And that's often really what draws people in is what's unique about this place. That's what causes people to want to go and travel to other places and bring that back to, that's the same thing that we see with human relationships as well. I like to use a variety of instructional strategies so that we can, have students with different preferences, different abilities and backgrounds, help tailor to their needs what they are. So we use discussion format, we use lectures, we use hands-on labs. Sometimes we're outside in the field, other times we're working inside. And so this variety of experiences, hopefully that means that everybody is getting something that works well for them. Being in science, the scientific method is a big part of my background, trying to teach students, what we know about biology, but also how do we learn that? What are the tools we're using to be able to figure this out? Because in 5-10 years, things change so quickly. There's going to be a lot of new knowledge. They're going to have to teach themselves that information as it develops, and also learn from how have we previously learned these things to be able to identify that new knowledge. I like to have hands-on experiences for students whenever possible. One of the things we've done is create some prairie gardens here on campus. It's just a small replica that we've created here on campus, but it gets some exposure to students about what was the prairie like, what are some of the vegetation that we'd see there, how dense it is, and what are some of the organisms that it draws in here. Even though we are in an urban area, it's been pretty incredible to see the return of a lot of these insects and birds and other species once you bring that community there. Ignorance isn't bliss when it comes to a lot of these issues. This is affecting everybody in our daily lives, whether you like it or not. The air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you ingest, it's all affecting you, whether you understand why these pollution issues are of concern or not. One of the other activities that I've done with students is service learning projects working with Cook County Forest Preserves. They have a lot of volunteer efforts to help do restoration work in the forest preserves around this area. And so I worked with students going out volunteering in a lot of those restoration activities, get some exposure to some of the types of activities, whether it's a prescribed burn, cutting down invasive species, spreading seeds to regenerate the native vegetation that's there. But it gets a lot of hands-on experience there, and some of the students have continued that work even after the course ended and they were doing it for credit, and continued it because they felt that it gave back and it was a really enriching experience. I like to use a variety of formative and summative assessments so that it's not just high stakes tests and exams that they experience. So we do a wide range of activities. We're doing homework assignments, we're doing in-class activities, we're doing labs. So we help get that rich feedback about what are students' knowledge about this material. It's not just what can you do on quick timed recall where the pressure is a bit greater. I also use the experiences as the students move on from here. They successfully graduate here, move on to four-year schools, successfully enroll there and graduate eventually. And we've had many students that have even gone on to professional schools, graduate schools, and come back and said, this really laid the foundation for a good experience and my success later on. I think that's probably the greatest measure of success, that we prepare them for those future endeavors.
All right. Wonderful words from Joe. Our discussion starts off with a summary of what you learned from Jill. And again, each person gets the same questions for all of you, so you see the repetition of the questions as well too. I know. Tuan, that was obvious. I know. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, I just took a class with Joe. So formative and summative chances of low stake, some low stake chances to show what they know, and then later on would be higher stake chances. But what I really liked, what Joe said, was about the open-ended education resources. The open education resources. I have experience, with one of my classes where I'm being really strong-armed by the publisher to really push the book. And I know there's many students that can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And I can't, in good conscience, if some students can't afford the book, maybe they're going to the library, they go to the library and read it or whatever, but they can't afford the online classes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't use I can't develop my assessments or whatever on there, or have materials that other students can't use because they don't have the money. So open resources are really important for me, to have available.
I like it. I like it. Miss Sarah?
I thought his emphasis on service learning is really important because I think that connects students with the community, but then also helps them think globally as well. So you're seeing how you're applying the ideas and concepts in your local context, but then it also probably compels you to consider that as part of the larger world. So that's what stood out to me.
I like it. I've actually done that for my class before most of you probably got here. We used to have a President Granada, and if you remember her, she and the board were walking one day, and my class was outside, and she came over and she's like, "What are you doing?" We're actually looking at geometry. And it's like, how do you look at geometry? Every building, every sculpture, everything on this campus is geometry. And the board was like so impressed, and they walked away. It's like, oh, is he engaging this? And I say math is not just in the classroom, it's also outside the classroom as well too. And I wanted my students to not only be exposed to that, but have that adventure of saying that it's just not in the classroom, you have to learn. You can learn outside as well too. And look at the campus. I said, we can figure out everything we want to if we want to stay outside. I got the first question, could we measure the buildings? Yeah, we sure can. What tools are we going to use? Ourselves. I said, how do you think the Egyptians used to use? They didn't have any tools. They made them. But that's me. We're just going down the line.
I think I also like the in-service point Joe talk about, and I'm trying to figure out like how I want to contribute, link it to my course as well. So I'm trying to maybe thinking in the future to, because 80% of my classroom in the classroom is going for nursing. 80% of students. So for me, I mean, he's taken student to forest preserve, explore environmental and all of that. I will think like maybe I will take them to hospices or to see how after you actually getting old, what is the process of human anatomy, what's happening to the person overall after a certain age, and how you can help and what you do as a nurse. Or we can visit the hospitals or clinic or just to hands-on to see like if this is something they want to do really before they want to actually get into the program. So because you don't want to fill the program just because you realize you cannot look at the blood and you want to be a nurse.
You mentioned that there was a painter who actually created a painting. In this case, if you walk past it, it shows the etymology of the person aging every year or so. I can't remember what they said in the description, but it starts off as a baby, and at the end, when you get to the right of the picture, they're old. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And he used, in his synopsis, he used science to say that he learned it from a science class.
That's a good idea because I teach them how the baby born with the two curvature of the vertebral column, and that's why they bending like that. And how when they develop the two other curvature, which is cervical and lumbar, which is those are the one who help them when the baby start holding the head, looking for you, and laying down and looking for you, be able to keep the head up and all of that. So this is indication that the baby start developing this. And later on, maybe we can show them like, oh, look what's happening to the spinal cord later on as they undergo osteoporosis, which is what actually people losing the bone density and how the vertebrae is fused and look how the shape now. So this is the specific things about the aging process of people and how the human body and the effect of certain, I mean, not even disease, this is something like you is affected by age.
So I too like the big service thing, and it's interesting. My take on it was a little bit more on like a co-op program. So, you know, when you learn something by reading it and then you go out and you practice it, it makes it so much better. It's like teaching teaching others. And so some of the things that we have baked into our curriculum is, I give a Frank Lloyd Wright tour, so in the neighborhood. So I go through, and the other thing is we give extra credit to our students if they attend, for instance, a film on architecture and they want to come back and talk about it. Or there was a home show, like a home building show. So somebody went to it and came back and was like super excited about having gone to that home show. Because again, who would ever take you to a home show when you're 18? No one. But when you go, and he was like super excited, and he talked to the class about what he saw. I think like, a lot of sustainability sort of things come into architecture into play. So if they go to the film festival or Open House Chicago, we give them extra credit for those sorts of things if they attend. They take a couple of hours out of their time and go and attend. We take them to the reuse, over Melrose Park. It's a reuse place where salvage yard, where they can see that products that are used in residential and commercial buildings can be reused. So again, sort of that's really engaging, and then we have questionnaires for them to fill out. Like, what do you think is, their opinions about that sort of thing. So I think that's all like really great to get them out of the classroom and get them into the real world.
That is true. Miss Sharon? I have a tickle, that's why I'm like.
In the nursing department, our students do learn in theory, and then they are able to go out and put it in practice in the clinical setting in hospitals and nursing homes. And this is what the students love the most, to be able to do it. And that's what we find is most interesting and helpful, and that's where we see their growth. When they start, and then as they're getting ready to graduate, it's a big difference. And also we have labs where they go and practice, but it's not the same as when you get that live patient that you have to take care of and be responsible for.
So true, so true.
So they find it very helpful. They love it. I mean, they would do that probably preferable to sitting in a classroom any day.
So back to the last question, because we're wrapping up and we're going to do 2 today for all of you. If you could think of 5 words to express what this video, Joe, who is in the science department, said, or what this video expressed, or what this video would educate or focus on. 5 words, what would you say? That with some other institution, university, okay, I'll use a different one, like Concordia. They're our neighbors, if you didn't know that. They are our neighbors. They were to use this video in one of their presentations, maybe in a classroom or whatever. What would you use the 5 words to describe the video itself?
I watch the video again.
Watch the video again?
Yeah.
That's too funny.
I watched it.
Making learning materials more available.
Making learning materials more available?
Yeah.
Okay.
To everyone.
Oh.
I have to add that, to everyone, regardless of their financial status.
But you also mentioned opening resources.
Right, that's right,
Yeah. Yes.
I
Yes, sir.
said applying learning and enriching experiences.
Ooh. It makes me want to challenge myself. I like it. Like it. What's that, Miss Sharon? You want to go too? Go ahead.
Pass.
So I said
Yes, ma'am.
student-centered learning applications.
I like that. You're right. That is a good one. Kudos. I like it. Yeah. We do want to make sure every student has the resources to learn. And you're right. I love where individuals said that, was it you that said publishers are forced to use their textbooks?
The publisher actually told me the student will do what you tell them to do.
I'm glad it wasn't me, because they would have had a lot of words coming from me.
They did have
would have walked off.
they did have a lot of words coming out. They did.
No, I would have hurt their feelings.
I was steam coming out.
Well, that's the thing. Students will do what you ask them to
But
do.
how
when
unfair
you
is that if
have
they can't do it?
But
They can't
then
do it.
when you have a trusting relationship, they
Right.
will do everything they can for you in
Right.
class
Right.
and do these things.
But to tell them to.
But they can't.
Right.
That's right.
You know,
So this is a different
and
conversation.
to demand that they purchase something that they can't keep.
How do you
They
build
can't
trust?
even keep it. right?
Yeah,
You can't even keep it.
Sort.
You know, and I understand, to make my life easier, I want you to buy this book. You know, buy this download.
It's hard.
It is.
It really
It is. I'm sorry, but it's.
Is that changing?
I hope, you know, I have a class that the book is included, which is great.
Inclusive access.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I have one that's not, and how can I, you know, if you can't afford it, you just can't afford it.
There are certain books I know in my profession that I still look at after 40 years that are relevant, that I bought as a student. And so those, I think, can be so great
Absolutely.
to have as a resource if that's what you're going to do.
And if you go to the library site, I forget the name of it right now, but we use it, and you go to find resources, and then it's open to the right.
Uh-huh.
And it's, what is it called? But it has a lot of free textbooks and things in there.
There is a website, it's called OpenStax.
OpenStax, yeah.
OpenStax.
You can actually just, anybody can use anything you want. And that's including student, faculty. You can actually take, build up already course in there and use it.
There are a lot of them. The one that I like is called Book Nook. They actually have all across the disciplines in their PDF files that instructors created just for online for anyone to use.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, if I will say something, I will definitely say learning is all lifetime process should be, and it's all about community as well.
I like it. I like it.
It should be include your community because, you know, not only learning to just for your career, you need to be able to see what's going around.
That is true.
Around you too.
That is true. Ms. Sharon, you sure you want to pass?
I'm sitting here trying to write something out, thinking it through, and I haven't got anything that I want to share at this time.
No worries, no worries. I would like to say, all of you, thank you for your participation. We're going to be ending because I have a student conference. I do. I have a student conference, but I would like to say I appreciate all of your feedback on the 2 videos. I'll let my colleague know we only saw the 2. It was supposed to be 3, but we'll build it up on the next one in this case. And again, Ms. Sharon, thank you for joining us virtually. We see you in spirit. We see you in person. We see you through the TV, but we also feel your word of energy. It is. When we were teaching remotely, that's what I would always say to my students that I didn't see. Even I heard them, but I told them that we still felt your spirit in the classroom. And in that end, thank you again, all of you, for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think so. Oh, thank you. Sorry. So,
Isn't it fun to teach people where you don't see them?
I took a